Hey everybody, Juan here. Today I'm gonna be speaking about data management for BI teams. And I know what you're all thinking. Data management really needs a rebranding. Most people think the topic is either boring or they even shy away from it altogether. In my experience, two of the things I hear quite often that people don't like about data management is that first, it feels like an eternal checklist of things that you need to do that kind of hinder you from getting your work done. And second, I hear a lot that data management it is sometimes a mix of keywords and constructs that are very difficult to translate into actions. And I'm talking about words like efficiency, security, um, cost management, scalability, and that can be sometimes daunting to translate into actions that your team can take. But worry not, because today I prepared a presentation for all of you with some concrete tips, things that I have seen in my journey as a consultant of some of the best BI teams that I've seen out there, and I truly believe some of them can really help you, your team, and your organization. So, without further ado, let's get started. First things first, who am I? As you already saw, my name is Juan. I currently work as an analytics engineer. And more importantly, just like many of you listening to this, I started as a BI analyst. When I first got started, my priority was just to hack things into, well, getting things done really. Hack Tableau reports, figure out, struggle with DAX formulas, and see how exactly you write a SQL query that does what you need to get done. And so you're too worried about finding one solution. But later, when you get a bit better, you start learning, oh, I know at least three solutions for this problem. And then you start thinking in terms of this is probably the best one in terms of performance, this is the best one in terms of readability. But now I am in a point where I actually step back a little bit from all of that action. And I actively think, how can we empower everybody that is doing that analysis? From the person that just is struggling to find one solution to the person that knows three different solutions. How can I, as a centralized data team in an organization, really help every single person that is working with data? That's a little bit everything that I'm doing right now. And that's why data management is one of those topics that I'm truly passionate about. And yeah, I'm fairly confident that there are some things that I'm going to share with you today that could potentially help you. So stay tuned. Let's start with the first reel, which is quick onboarding to data. As you hire new analysts, new BI people, new data scientists, or even people that just will casually look into data, you are going to need to onboard them. And there are going to be some days before they are actually proficient with the data. Three things that you can do to make that onboarding process faster and less painful is one, consider sticking to tools, frameworks, and languages that more people know. Just to give you an example, nowadays we have this really big craze for SQL only or SQL first, and it does make sense because for every person that knows, let's say, Power BI DAX, Power Query M, LookML, or whatever it is that you're using, there are always going to be many more people that are proficient in SQL. That's just going to make it easier for people to already know what's happening, to read scripts, and just much better for recruiting, really. So consider changing to use frameworks, languages, and tools. Second one is build a habit of writing down trivial knowledge. And by this I mean make sure that you write what does every column mean, right? Why are there some crazy results in there? Like why was a certain day so high or so low? And three, also build how are the definitions of certain, for example, metrics or certain calculations. I'll talk a bit later about calculations and metrics, but let me give you an example of things that are really trivial knowledge that were very painful when I was getting started. There was a company where I was working, and I later found out that during their first years, they were not capturing the age of their subscribers. And what they decided to do was to input the unknown values by the mean, which I think we can all agree is a terrible method. So all of a sudden, every single person in the first couple of years of the business had an age of 23, which is terrible because there is no way of you to know that unless you just dig deeper into the data. And just making sure that you can leave a note close to the table saying, hey, this happened during the first years, or this particular day something happened, or this is how we calculate promotions, or this is a test. Oh, that's one that really a lot of companies suffer from. Hey, every single thing that is marked with this is a text. And in terms of capturing trivial knowledge, you can do it in a Word document, you can do it in, Confluence, you can have some sort of Excel spreadsheet. I wouldn't really recommend any of those approaches because I know they're a bit far from the table and they're going to go outdated. What I would really recommend you is to get a decent data catalog. But the truth is, what matters is that you start making a habit of writing those things down. Make sure that you build some sort of knowledge database with all of these quirks that your data has. Because trust me, every time somebody's checking that table that has the crazy ages, it would be super nice if there is a list of notes of all of the quirks of that table. And the final one, which is pretty much related, is help people find the needle in the haystack. Sometimes when especially business people speak about data, they are not conscious if what they're telling you is the value of a row, if it's a column, in which table, in which schema, in which database exactly they're gonna say. Sometimes people are gonna say, hey, we sold quite well in region south. And you as a newly onboarded data person, chances are you don't know what exactly that's referring to. So having some sort of tool, like, once again, a data catalog that allows you to look for, hey, region south, and it tells you, oh yeah, it's referring to this value, this column, this database. That exercise is super valuable. So make sure that you have at least one tool that allows people to search on that level. Once again, use commonly used languages and frameworks. Capture trivial knowledge, make sure that becomes a habit every time you find a crazy quirk in your data. And get a decent tool, like a data catalog that allows people to find needles in the haystack. So are they referring to a column, in which database, in which schema type of situation? That's going to make onboarding much, much faster. The second domain that I want to speak is reusing data products. Now, when I first got started as an analyst, I remember I was super proud of that one Python script that I built that would clean quite a lot of the manually inputted data. And that was great. But later I realized it was quite hard for me to just delegate that to somebody or making sure that that thing lived on. I also noticed that quite a lot of people make their own attempts to solve the same problem, so in reality, it was just quite a waste of a lot of people's work. So, what you and your data team should do is first create a process that allows people to share their work. Meaning, tell everybody that works with data in your organization, hey, if you build a cool, let's say, Alteryx workflow, a cool Tableau dashboard, a cool DBT model, a cool whatever it is, and you want to share with other people, here is the list of things that need to happen. And that could be as complex as running it via CI/CD pipeline that automatically does some checks and then passes the code through a linter and so on. But it can also be as simple as having a couple of senior colleagues view it, make sure that it's placed somewhere, make sure that it has a proper owner, make sure that there is a responsibility for, yeah, if it breaks, it comes down to you or it comes back to this owner person. Just having that procedure makes a huge difference in terms of people reusing each other's work. Second one is give people an incentive to polish their work, to productionize it. Now, sadly, a lot of our work sometimes ends up as quick and dirty things here and there that even though you kind of realize, this would be helpful for somebody, there is not that much of an incentive to go back and polish it. Well, I've actually worked in some companies where they artificially add constraints to give people like an incentive to work on that. For example, one company had a limit of you can only share a report with maximum 5 people. Or another one had a constraint that every 6 months or every 3 months, your dashboards become private. Unless you go through the process, like we mentioned in the one before, and fully productionize it. So sometimes adding a constraint or like think of it as an incentive can make a massive difference. And which constraint exactly works for your organization or even what rewards, that's really up to you, but give people that reason. And finally, foster a data community. Make sure that people are sharing with each other what they know. Consider organizing some data lunch and learns where people share their knowledge, where people present some of the stuff that they're working on. Consider creating a wiki, consider opening up a Slack channel, because chances are if somebody has one question, more people are going to have it. So having a place like, let's say, a Slack channel where people can check and look back if somebody has already asked a question saves you quite a lot of work from answering to every single person. So make sure that people answer their own questions. And so to recap, in the realm of reusing data products, my tips are: create a process that allows people to share, give people an incentive to polish their work, and create a data community. Next topic that I want to touch with all of you is making fewer mistakes. Because, well, let's face it, everybody has made big mistakes in the world of data. Sometimes you send a report and then you only realize, these values were not correct, or this definition is not okay, or I did the join incorrectly and I accidentally caused it. It really doesn't matter. The point is, mistakes are going to happen, especially if there is a lot of manual work involved. And there are some things that you can do as a team to reduce that amount of mistakes. The first one is create master data sources. As in, have some data sources that people can actively use to compare whatever they're building. I once had a company where they had this spreadsheet that every single report that I built had to match exactly those same numbers. So I would check how much were the sales for Spain on this particular day, and if the value was not the same, then I would start worrying because maybe I did something. So every single time you take the effort to build some sort of version of the truth or master data source, make that available. A lot of people could thank you for that. Second topic is know your metrics and document them really well. When you're first starting, calculating metrics or KPIs can be challenging. I remember one time they asked me to build a report on clients, and according to them, the definition of clients was count distinct of client ID. I thought, simple. But then we started checking, and then we realized, if people are internal workers, then they shouldn't count as clients. There was this one time that the CEO gave two people a free subscription just for marketing purposes. If somebody decides to add more people from their family in the same plan, then they shouldn't count as customers, only the person that is paying, and so on. And of course, there are all of the test instances once again. So just having all of that written down helps a lot. And there are many ways in which you can do this. The first one is, of course, have the SQL definition of every metric very well documented, as in this is how you calculate the column, these are the joins that you need to do, these are the tables that you need, these are the things that you need to put in the where or the having clauses. That helps a lot. You can also try documenting the business understanding of a metric, as in this metric is important for us because whatever reason. If this metric is going up, then this one should also be going up, otherwise there is something suspicious going on. And even ideally you maybe also have some sort of metric store, which is very similar to what I mentioned with the master data sources. Sometimes metric stores already have pre-calculated values of the metric. So metric by day, metric by product, whatever it is. And so if that's the only thing that you really need for a report, well, you connect directly to the metric store, and that's where you find the values. Or in the worst case, you know that there in the metric store you're going to find both the SQL definition, the business definition, but also like what numbers you should be seeing. So if any of them seems to be incorrect, then what matters is keep your metrics very well documented, especially your metrics. And there are catalogs or data or metric stores that really help you with that. Final tip is test your code and your data. And there are many levels to this. You can fully DevOpsify your whole thing, that every single time somebody pushes to the main branch, something gets automatically checked and it goes through a code linter and whatever it is. It can be that complex, but you can also do it on a smaller scale, from doing code reviews maybe once a week or once, whatever it is that works for your team. Maybe build some fake tables of input output so that people can test whatever it is that they need to test, some sort of metric logic. And just whatever it is, make sure that people build a habit of testing both their code and also their data. And I know that can seem a bit difficult if maybe you're not that technical or that proficient with some tools, because there are some great frameworks out there. There is, for example, PyTest, there is Great Expectations. Tools like DBT allow you to work with tests in a much better integrated manner. But it is just a matter of doing it. Don't worry about making the process perfect. It is, at least at first, about building the culture around it. Later, you're gonna perfect the whole thing. So going back, in the realm of making fewer mistakes, have some master data sets, document your metrics, and test your code and your data. And finally, make and don't break. And this one is one that I have experienced quite a lot. I'll never forget one time I built a great script. I came next morning and nothing would work. And later I realized that it was because somebody changed all of the names of the database. And we could argue that it was necessary and the naming conventions were much better afterwards. But the truth is, quite a lot of my work broke. Requests just kept on piling up, and I spent quite some days figuring out what happened and how to fix every single thing. I would have loved that whoever changed those names, whoever made that change, would have been proactive to tell me. And whenever you're in that position where you're changing or creating new stuff or deleting old stuff, you should be able to tell whoever is going to be affected. And so the 3 tips that I'm going to give you in the realm of make and don't break is: 1, find out who are your users, who's using your dashboard, who's receiving that email that SQL Server automatically sends with a CSV of data, who build something depending on that DBT model, and so on. Just knowing your users helps quite a lot to be proactive and tell people, hey, I might accidentally change this. Please make sure that you modify the column references, whatever it is. It also allows you to find, like, oh, this person uses this table quite a lot. Then maybe this is the correct table because I know that this person is doing good reports. It also helps you because, hey, you can go to any of the users of the table and ask them questions like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? So make sure that it's very clear who is using the work that you do. And this might seem like a challenge, like how am I supposed to know this? But I assure you, every single warehouse that you have has some sort of table where you can see the account usage. Every tool like Tableau server or Power BI service has a way in which you can look at this if you're the administrator. So knowing who are your users, it's definitely an effort that is worth doing. Secondly is making sure that there is always a clear owner for every single data thing. Generally, the default owner of things is the person that built them, but it happens quite often that people come and go, people are on holidays, and then who's responsible if something breaks, if somebody has a question about something. So what I would recommend you is to have data owners per domain. Have the person that understands about the finance reports, make that person the finance data owner. Same for other domains in your organization, depending on how big your organization is or how small. And we're not talking about like a full-time job here. It could be, but it's just somebody that is there to answer questions, and somebody that is there that whenever a report breaks, has at least enough knowledge to tell the owner, to tell whoever built it or whoever is in charge of fixing it, hey, this is what broke and this is more or less how you do it. So having that owner is very important. Every single time anybody has a question about something data, should be super clear who is the person that you need to contact. And finally, the last tip that I'm going to give you today, and also in the realm of make and don't break, is understand the lineage of every single thing that you build. And now there are quite a lot of tools that allow you to see the lineage, and you're really going to want to have one of these ones. Lineage generally goes sometimes upstream, as in, let's say for these dashboards, I use these tables that live in these databases, but it also lives downstream. So I build this DBT model. Which people are building models on top of that, or which people are building dashboards underneath it? Having a tool that just tells you that, it's massive, because 1, it allows you to debug much faster. 2, you can do some sort of impact analysis whenever you're gonna break something, which people I'm gonna potentially hinder. And three, then you can take much better decisions. For example, I had a client that had a massive table, and that thing was piling up a lot of cost just by calculating itself. And we had the impression that nobody was using that table. And so having a lineage tool to actually confirm that would have been much better, because just because they were not really sure, they left it there, which could have potentially saved them quite a lot. So once again, find out who is using your data. Make sure that for every single workflow there is a clear owner, or every single domain. And finally, understand the lineage, upstream and downstream. There are tools that do it, and you're not going to regret getting one of those. So finally, to conclude my talk, I gave you some tips. I hope it would be a success for me if at least one of the things that I talked today sparkle any of your curiosity and you're thinking, this would be interesting to try. The key message here is data management is not a trade-off between doing things fast or right. But if things are going well, data management should be, doing both. So if any of you out there seeing this, things or anything sparkle your curiosity, let me know. Let's have a chat, let's have a coffee. I'm very happy to tell you and your organization some ideas, happy to brainstorm with you, happy to help you choose the right, data catalog, data BI tool, whatever it is for your organization. Data management is a topic that I'm really passionate about. And if this sparkled any curiosity from your side, then to me it was a massive success. So thanks everybody for watching, and see you next time.